Good evening, friends. It's Doug
For Towers Films.
and welcome to Coffee and a Chat, Extended Chat, episode number 12. And tonight we thought we'd talk about, well, I guess it can be kind of a polarizing subject.
I guess.
Recently on our social media, I conducted a poll, and I asked this question: do you think drivers should have to do a road test when it comes time to renew their license?
Right.
So we got a 50-50 answer.
Okay.
So 50% said yes, 50% said no way.
Slight edge toward yes.
But
it's like 52 to like 48, something like that.
So here's where I want to ask. Okay. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I'm in the yes category. I think they should be renewed, or they should have to take a road test.
Of course.
Every time you have to renew. Now here in Canada, it's every 5 years you have to renew your license.
Yes.
I think that's at least Ontario. I don't know if that's right across Canada. Yes. I'm assuming it is, but I'm pretty sure it's a provincial controlled thing. So it's 5 years anyway here in Canada. So I think that's pretty standard. So yeah, I think so. And I'll say this: why?
Okay.
Now, I've driven, so this isn't I've never driven before kind of thing. But I find, say you're a pedestrian, even if you are a driver, there's too many drivers out there that do not pay attention.
Oh.
So it's either they're texting, they're on their phone, they're changing the radio, talking to their passenger, or whatnot.
Yes.
Or, which so most if you've ever been a pedestrian, you will see this.
Mm-hmm.
You can be at the light and it's green.
Yes.
For you to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they may be turning.
Okay.
Because I've done this. I will look all 4 ways around to make sure the cars are stopped that haven't turned yet, or if I think they can see me.
Okay.
Or whatever. It's nothing coming up. And I've started to go, and I've still almost been hit.
Yes,
by
that's
a
true.
Car.
That's true.
Who's turned and didn't notice me until the last minute because they're too busy making sure they're not hitting cars going by and not looking for pedestrians.
That's true.
Granted, some pedestrians will cross mid-block, and a lot, I've seen that too, where they will cross mid-block, and they're risking it because the cars aren't that far away, and they will still try to cross, and some of them will just la-di-da-di-da, walk casually across the street. We don't do that. Even if it's mid-block, which is not jaywalking, not here in Canada.
No.
That's not what jaywalking is. We can talk about that later. But if we're doing that, there's a long time in between when cars turn, not succeeding cars turning before we cross. So to make it safer for us, right, and for them. But you see it too often. I don't know how many times I've started to cross the street. And I keep an eye on the car turning. And it's my right of way to go.
Yes.
And I go, and they will, oh, crap, there's someone in front of me.
Yeah.
Because they're not looking for you. So and you see it too many times, so many bad habits. Here in Ontario, there is actually a law now that when you turn, it used to be, say you're turning left, right, whatever.
Okay.
You used to be able to turn once the pedestrian hits at least halfway across the street.
But that's been changed.
That law has been changed in the less than 5 years.
Yes.
That you now have to wait till the pedestrian hits the other side of the crosswalk before you turn. I haven't seen too many cars do that.
No.
They will still turn within inches behind you.
Yeah.
Now, what if you are an older person, or if you tripped or something? Oh, now they're running you over.
Okay. Okay. Case in point. When I had my accident.
Yes. Yeah, when he broke his hand.
When I broke my hand, I tripped and fell. Okay.
Luckily, he was on the road. He had the green light.
I had the cross.
But that's city's fault there.
But even so, I hadn't cleared. The light had changed.
Right.
I hadn't cleared the sidewalk and the crosswalk.
You barely were into the road, but you fell.
And the car just an arm's length in front of me.
Well, going the other way.
Going the opposite way.
The ones that would have hit you, they stopped.
You know.
But the ones across from you
started to move.
Moved. And none of them stopped.
You know.
None of them. They all went. And they shouldn't have moved when there's a person in the roadway. Yeah. None of them should have gone, but they all did.
Yeah.
Because they didn't notice.
You know.
And that's a problem.
That is a major problem.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen far too many times in the news pedestrian fatalities.
Oh yeah. At intersections.
Intersections.
It's not always the pedestrian's fault.
At crosswalks.
At crosswalks. Yeah.
They haven't even gone across the street. And a car is not.
They've been waiting to cross the street and they've been in.
And
or they just stepped off the curb. And because we just heard actually this week. Now, at this point, we don't know the circumstances. No. We don't know what happened at all. But we can assume what happened is a little boy was riding his bike with his father and was hit at a crosswalk. As far as this is what we heard.
Mm-hmm.
This is all that we've heard.
Yes.
So we're only speculating at this point, because this is all we've been given so far. Whether or not more is made public, that's really up to the police and it's up to the family. So we're not sure at this point. But what it looks like from what we've heard is father and son were trying to cross a very busy street here. It's called here Ontario. It's a very busy street.
Oh.
And as far as we're aware, I highly doubt the father would take his 5-year-old across against the light.
No.
They probably have the light just because it's just too busy. There's no real space in between cars there at all. And the little boy got hit by a truck and was actually dragged a little bit. He subsequently died, and our condolences to the family.
Yes.
Granted, the driver stayed there. So many times they did not, but they did stay there and they were cooperating. So at this point, we don't know exactly what happened, but we can assume. We don't know if there's speed or what. A lot of people do. I'll say this: a lot of people speed on that road.
Oh.
It's only here. It's kilometers an hour. So they were going about 60 kilometers an hour. From miles per hour, you'd have to convert that. If you're in miles per hour. But I don't know if he was speeding or she. I don't even know if it's a male or female driver.
It was never released.
As far as I don't know if it's been released or not. I haven't seen. But we can assume they may not have been paying attention. I don't know if they were turning. It sounded like they may have been turning. And again, that's really why we started talking about this, because it happens a lot.
Oh.
I mean, we've heard of not even that long ago, a couple girls, teenagers going home from school, same thing.
Yes.
They were crossing at the crosswalk and got hit by a turning car. We've been almost hit several times, the same thing. And we are not ones to just go willy-nilly.
No.
We tend to check. And these are cars coming out of the blue, turning. And they just turn.
And we lost a neighbor.
To the exact, and they were speeding.
And
he was crossing the street with his dog. Car sped down the street. Didn't look, turned, and hit and killed him too. Same problem.
And so where I fall in this, I say most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely, because people have a tendency to get lazy with certain things.
Right.
And they pick up lazy habits.
And bad habits. Yes.
If you're I'd even say at my age, at 50, yes, retest me if I'm driving.
Well, I'm talking about
anybody,
anybody, not just like one of the people in the poll said 75 and up, definitely they should road test. And now that is one thing too that I think is a misconception here in Canada or in Ontario, that when you turn 80, every 2 years, I think it is now, you actually have to go back, do a test. You are not road tested every 2 years, if at all, unless they deem you need to be.
Yeah.
Basically, what it is you sit in a class and they ask questions, and anybody who answers that question, everybody passes. So you don't even need to know the answer to that question in order to pass. Just let somebody else answer it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a written test.
It's an oral exam. Yeah.
And only one person needs to answer it correctly, and everybody passes it. So really, is that really safe to do? They're not road tested, and they don't even actually have to answer the question correctly. Just let whoever knows the answer it. So how's that really testing their ability? But I'm talking about any driver.
Oh,
any age.
I think, of course.
And being a driver, and I've my sister's a driving instructor. She agrees with that. And
like
it's a commercial license. It actually costs more for a commercial license.
Now, as we're starting to get into the warmer weather, because my day job, I end up working later into the evening outside of the home.
Yeah, it's light for later.
But now. I have an electric bike that I would travel with.
Right.
And
in the warm weather.
In the warmer weather. I'm not comfortable traveling on the same streets
as
some of these drivers.
And you can't ride on the sidewalk usually either.
And so I've figured out alternate routes to come home, so I have a degree of safety.
Right.
Because I can only take care of myself.
Right.
And if I have to be aware of what I'm doing on my electric bike that cannot go as fast as a car, you as a licensed driver should do everything in your power to keep yourself safe and those around you safe.
Of course.
But
because your vehicle can kill somebody.
Exactly. And I think it should be mandatory. So you get your license at 18,
16.
At 16, 21 or 23, you're retested.
Right. Because you actually can develop very bad habits in those 5 years.
Oh, of course.
And you actually change this driver because you as a person changed.
Yes.
I mean, when you're 16, I mean, not all 16-year-olds are reckless, but there are a lot who are. And they drive with their friends, and they speed, or they're not paying attention. A lot of them do not pay attention because that's not, again, not all of them, but a lot of them will, be talking or whatever. I mean, remember when you're a teenager, let's face it, you're not always concentrating on what you're doing. Let's be honest, we didn't.
That's true.
And some kids even they've had their own accidents and serious crashes because of speeding or just not paying attention or whatever. So then again, 5 years later, if you're 21, well, you're a different person again. You're an adult now. You've matured somewhat, you would think. And so again, you're a different driver, and then you might start to drink or whatever. I mean, that kind of, not to say you drink and drive, some do, and that's another issue. And then again, another 5 years, you change.
And so on down the road,
and you change, and you can develop bad habits as you drive. And, so now some people will actually take refresher courses.
Of course.
They have their license or whatever, but they do want to kind of refresh themselves to make sure they're keeping their skills good for the new laws. I mean, the laws do change quite a bit. I mean, it's actually good to keep on top of that because the road rules that, well, even when I got my license, have changed.
Yes.
Even in the last 5 years, there have been some changes to it. So, and it's good to keep on top of that.
Of course.
It's not like it's advertised. I mean, I remember hearing about it on the news about the new rules about you have to let the person clear the intersection before you turn. But not everybody watches the news, and not all news covers these things.
That's true.
So, it might be another good reason so that you stay on top of laws that have come out. Because some laws they don't enforce, they don't seem to enforce it either.
And you see that this kind of retesting can it's transferable into a lot of things.
Right.
Like in my job, we have equipment that we drive, like our lawn tractors, our floor scrubbers, and
you have to be trained.
We have to be trained.
Yeah.
We do have recertification days. Yep. And which are mandatory.
Right. You have to be certified for that.
Yes.
It's not like a one and okay forever. You never have to be tested again for it.
And one thing we've noticed with like cars, people when they're driving, if they're not paying attention, if they're looking over, say to your right,
Yeah.
you're going to drift.
You tend to drift, yeah, the way you're looking, yeah.
And so I'm going to use an example. I have a fellow member of my job that was in process of training, doing their practical with equipment,
Right.
and they had a tendency, and I've seen drivers do this, not really look ahead,
No,
but kind of look
look down
around,
at the road
and
not actually where they're going.
and so this staff member,
Or I've seen too, they'll say there's something on the side of the road, a building or something, and they'll catch it.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Now you're turning.
exactly, and this is what I had to say to her, because she was looking like straight down at the ground, and it's like, you need to pay attention to where you're going, because that's not a good habit to get into. And I said, okay, do you notice what you're doing? Because as she's looking like this, she doesn't realize that she's inadvertently turning. I said, there's an accident.
Well, plus you can't see who's in front of you.
Exactly.
Like you could be looking down like this, and someone is right in front of you, run into them.
Exactly. And I think there'll be probably, if it were to ever come to pass, I'm sure there'd be a lot of blowback about a mandatory retesting.
I bet, yeah.
I know my father, up until he dropped his license lower, he had a commercial license. He did it for a long time.
So did my dad. They had to, it's not necessarily be testing on the road, but they did have to go through testing, and they had to do medical and stuff. Like we have quite a few commercial drivers in our family, and because they've retired, a couple of them, they've dropped down, so they don't actually have to do the extra testing anymore. But my sister still does, because she still has a commercial, and a few other members do. And I mean, it's mandatory to make sure they're in top physical health.
Yes.
They still have their cognitive ability. They still know that they're still up to date on the rules of the road, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, they don't necessarily get road tested. Sometimes they do, though, but because it's mandatory to make sure they still know what they're doing, and they're still not taking up like potentially dangerous habits.
Oh, and that's a lot of it. I think we can curb that by making sure that Johnny has at 21 or 25 has to go back in and go through the whole thing of a road test.
Would they still get their license?
Would they?
I think half of them wouldn't.
And and you know what? I'll take that one step further. You fail your road test, you're back to beginner level G1.
Oh, well, now here, so for those who don't know, who are not in Ontario, we're in Ontario. There's a graduate licensing system here. So the written test is called a G1. So you have to pass that. You have to stay in that for a year. So once you get to a year, you have, I forget how many weeks it is they'll give you to get your road test, your first road test. You have 2 road tests. First road test to get to G2. So now, when you're in G2, it's 5 years from the time you get your G2 till you get what they call the exit to the G license, which is your full license. So you have 5 years in that time to get it. And so then, you get your final road test and you get your G. So it's different. I don't know if that's all across Canada they have graduate licensing. And I know I don't know if anywhere in the States has that, or anywhere else in the world, but that's how it is here. So
because
he's talking about basically going back to a beginner or learner's permit.
Well, and I think that you should have to,
or at least maybe to the back to the
G2. Bring them down a notch, make them have to have someone in the car with them.
Well, yeah, it's G1 you do. It's a learner's permit. For G2 you can drive on your own.
But you can't be on the road after dark.
You don't really have as many restrictions. You can go after dark. You can't drink, though. You can't have any alcohol. If you're under, I think it's 18, you can't have passengers, or you can only have 1 or 2 passengers. Over a certain age, there's very few restrictions on you with the G2 license. But I mean, yeah, or something. You have to go back to school or something to learn what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And why you failed in the first place.
And I think, if that ripple effect of, okay, you picked up some dumb habits. Well, guess what? Here's the effect of that.
Correct you.
We're course correcting you.
Right.
We're taking you off the road. We're putting you back into a driving school.
Yeah.
For you to go through mandatory retraining. Then we road test you again.
Right. To make sure you know what you're doing before you send you out there again.
So,
well, because if you think about it, that is the case in some cases.
Of course.
That you can't drive by court law. So, for example, there are sometimes drinking and driving.
Yes.
They'll revoke your license or they'll suspend it. And sometimes, especially if you're a dangerous driver, you've been a repeat offender,
you won't ever get it back.
They'll actually make you go back to like school or driving school or something to relearn how to do these kind of things, especially if you're really bad. You've gotten so many tickets or you've done so many infractions or something. Courts can actually order you to go back to driving school, and it's mandatory that you have to have somebody with you to because you're a danger now. You're just dangerous on the road. You've done so many wrong things. I'm not just talking speeding tickets once in a while or parking tickets. We're talking pretty serious offenses, where you hit people or you hit cars or you've run off the road or you've run into a ditch or into a tree or something. You've seen them. They're pretty bad drivers out there. But excuse me, but I mean, when you're not paying attention to pedestrians specifically, I mean, if you can see a car, I've seen cars cut other cars off, even on the roads. They're not realizing how close a car behind them is, or even a truck. I've seen them do it with a truck. I mean, we just saw it like this past week. It's a tractor trailer truck, and the person cut in front of them, and if that truck didn't have the reflexes they did, there'd be nothing left of this car.
And now, like, to give a little context, we have seen this driver on a number of occasions.
They're excellent. We're talking about tractor trailer driver. They're excellent.
And he understands his truck and he understands his rig. He knows what he can do with it. And that other driver should thank his lucky stars that
was a driver.
It was a driver that knew what he was doing.
Yeah, definitely.
But the thing is, we as a society shouldn't have to depend on.
Don't assume because truck can't stop on a dime.
Because a truck or a train requires 3 times the length of itself to stop.
Especially if it's heavily loaded.
Yeah.
It can't stop on a dime. No. Not like a car. Oh, a car can't even stop on a dime. I'll say about phenomenal brakes, but that's pushing it even. I mean, but why would you risk that? Why assume this truck's going to stop for you when you don't have the right of way? They do.
No.
So why are you pushing for it and risking your life and your passenger's life?
Exactly.
I mean, the truck driver's probably going to be okay because they're a much, 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 much larger vehicle than you are. I mean, if it's against another tractor trailer, it's your relative about even. But I mean, why would you do that?
Why tempt fate?
What would even go through your head? Think, I think I'll play chicken with a tractor trailer.
Well,
we've seen it with trains too. Why would you do that? Train can't stop for you.
Understand this. It's going to go one of 2 ways. They're going to either wreck your car or drive right through your car.
Let's face it, your car's going to be off.
You and the car are going to be screwed.
You're lucky to survive that.
Exactly.
I mean, let's face it. You're talking about a pretty much fully loaded tractor trailer plowing into you. You really think it's going to survive?
You're done.
Not too often. I mean, you might survive it, maybe, but I highly doubt your car will.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big truck,
So I know this is kind of
and we know it's controversial. We know a lot of people, like your polls, 50, pretty much 50-50.
So like we said, it's a pretty controversial idea that we're putting out there.
Right.
But maybe we need to do something.
Well, something different needs to be done.
We need to do something radical because
there's been a lot of pedestrian accidents. And like I said before, there are pedestrians who've done some pretty dumb things. We've seen it ourselves. Like
Yeah.
they'll cross when there's like a car foot away from them or whatnot. I mean, we've seen it. We know that. But we're talking about the ones where they're crossing at a light, a stop sign, or with a crossing guard. We've seen them blow past crossing guards and not see them apparently, or just ignore them. Or at lights and the light is green, or they'll turn when you're like a foot in front of them, or they'll turn when a foot ahead of you because they want to beat you. You know, they're in a rush.
Yeah.
They can't let you finish crossing the street. They need to turn right now. You know, I mean, this is the stuff that needs to be corrected.
Of course.
Pedestrian fatalities kind of get cut down a little bit.
And like,
or even car accidents with other cars.
And I know for myself, like I work in a public school, and
right.
it breaks my heart when I hear of a small child being injured or killed because of an irresponsible driver. Because I'm very close to the kids that in my school, and so I think it would just gut me if that was one of my kids that I knew, and you know, or even if it was our child, you know.
Well, it'd be worse.
It'd be even worse. It needs to change, and we need the government and to get on board with this change, no matter.
The thing is, would they? This is the problem. I mean, we've seen them talk about, the studies for this. How to improve safety for pedestrians? How to improve safety for cars, or how can we improve the roadways? Well, they don't really do much about it. No. I mean, it's always talk. Let's do yet another study on this. Let's do another study on this. I mean, you've seen it. I mean, it's not even just for this, it's for anything.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, from housing to, you know, wages to whatever. I mean, they have to do studies up the wazoo before they figure anything out. And then they do nothing. So, and that's all government. Like, it's not even just who's in power now, it's any of them. So, you know, I mean, that's why it keeps going on.
Yes.
You know, and I know a lot of people would think that if they did do something like this, you'd have to pay for it, you know, kind of thing every time. Now, I don't necessarily think you should have to pay for it because it would be mandatory. So I don't think you should actually have to pay for it. I mean, it would be part of your license renewal anyway.
Yes.
You pay for your license renewal anyway. So it would be part of that. It wouldn't be an additional fee. So it would just be part of what you pay for. I mean, it's an astronomical price as it is anyway. So why not include it? Not an extra price, which is being included as part of your license renewal. I mean, it's already a lot of money as it is every 5 years. So, you know, depending on what license you have, it's a little cheaper if it's just a G to the commercial licenses, but it might actually cut down on accidents. If
I would. Yeah.
Who actually knew what the rules of the road, or maybe they cut them down from speeding, or maybe, you know, whatever the case is, they don't tend to try to play chicken with the truck or cut you off or ride too close up your butt kind of thing. Because what if you stop suddenly? Well, now they're in your back seat. So, you know, I mean, how's that really a bad thing? I mean, is it a pain? Is it a nuisance? Well, yeah, it can be, sure. But it could potentially make the road safer.
Exactly.
Because then only those who actually are paying attention, who are trying to drive the best of their ability and protect themselves and their fellow people on the road, as well as pedestrians, those would be the ones out there without somebody having to sit with them.
Exactly. And I think our current government and the preceding government,
whoever takes over from this one,
should seriously consider a program as such, and say, you know, like literally couch it like we did. By doing this, we're reducing this.
Right. You definitely could. It couldn't hurt.
And I think by putting the accountability in the driver's hands.
Right.
You have to pass this test.
Yeah.
Because irresponsibility from you as a driver results in the increase of fatalities, accidents, speeding, car crashes, whatever.
Right.
So it's I think what the problem is, our government is afraid to put the onus on the driver by saying, you're not responsible enough. You're responsible for the accidents,
Right.
but we're not really going to force you to have to
learn a different way. Yeah. We'll just ticket you. And then let you on your merry way. Yeah. And then you can fight it in court. And if the cop doesn't show up, you get off, which is usually the case. Sometimes they show up if it's serious enough, but a lot of times they don't show up. And so they go on their merry, charge dropped, the cop's not there, and they go on their merry way to do it again. And then the next time they might actually kill somebody. And then, well, oops, you're either going to jail or you're being sued into oblivion by that family or whatever. I mean, so what's better? To let them keep doing the same thing over and over and over until eventually they do hit somebody and they die, and then they get sued or go to jail because they weren't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Or every time you're renewing your license, they check to see
your driver's license.
Granted, a lot of people will be on their best behavior when they're road testing. That can't be an argument too. Some people would say that they may be on their best behavior. But if you don't know the updated laws, you might still turn when you're not supposed to turn.
Exactly.
Or because you're not thinking, you might still do,
mm-hmm.
Especially if you've been driving a long time, you might still do kind of habits and you think it's okay
mm-hmm.
because it hasn't hurt anybody. But, but they would know.
Yeah.
And they would correct you on that. Like they would, and a new driver too. So.
And, I don't know if it's law here in Canada, but I do know in certain parts of the States, if say you're a habitual speeder,
yes,
like you can do like prison time.
Right. Yeah. It's like it becomes felony. If you get too many tickets, it becomes felony. I don't know if that's the case here. I'd have to look that up.
I think
it is in some states though.
I think if we were to add something like that, another extra level of deterrent,
I don't know if it does work. I don't know. Well, we don't. I don't know if it's like that. I don't even know if that's really a deterrent. It might be. For some people, it would be. Because then you can actually go to jail for it.
You see,
it becomes felony.
Honestly,
you get arrested for it.
That would scare me straight.
It would some people, sure. It would some people.
To know that. Oh, geez, if I keep screwing up like this,
I can go to jail.
I could go to jail.
And that's on a permanent record.
Yeah,
And then because you're convicted, there's some things you can't even do. Like you shouldn't travel here. Like you say you wanted to come here for vacation, you couldn't because you got a conviction on your record. I mean, it can actually hamper you in later in life.
Even in the line of work that I do.
You can't really have even if it's something like that.
You can't have any sort of criminal record.
No. And even if it's something like that, it's nothing to do with kids or nothing to do with anything. Well, nothing like what most would think is a bad crime. It can actually affect your life. Oh, sure.
Criminal records. You can't apply for an apartment.
A lot of times they will turn you away. Sure.
Bank loans. Forget it.
Yeah, because they think you're a risk. That's all they see.
Because
they don't ask what the conviction is.
Yeah. All they see is.
Conviction, you're convicted.
A convicted criminal.
Right. You can't travel. A lot of countries will not accept you.
So
they'll turn you back. Even for we've seen if you've ever watched shows like Border Patrol, a lot of countries turn you around even for like just a personal amount of weed if it's illegal and you were convicted for it, they can turn you around. You're not coming here because it's conviction. And that's not even that big of it. It's not like selling it.
No.
It's just you happen to have it, But that's what can actually affect your life later on. And there are states like that where if you've got too many even parking tickets, it becomes felony.
Yeah.
And you can actually be convicted for it, then it affects your life in other areas.
So
wouldn't it be better instead of getting to that point for people who don't agree with it to maybe have it corrected? Because you're paying for it anyway, have it corrected before it got to the point where you get ticket after ticket after ticket after ticket, or if an accident happens.
Exactly.
And then it affects the rest of your life.
So, I think let's put it on the table and say this. The licensing system needs to have a major overhaul.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. And we both agree on that. There needs to be more checks and balances.
Yep.
for younger and older drivers.
Any driver.
Well,
all driver, yeah.
Across the broad
right.
spectrum.
Right.
And there needs to be stringent repercussions. You can't say, well, you can come back in 6 weeks and we'll do your test again.
What do you mean?
Like you can rebook.
Fail a test, yeah, of course. Even if you're a new driver, you can if you fail, they'll give you a few weeks and then you can test again.
And
well, I don't really have a problem with that. I mean, but because they're not going to pass you if you still have warrant. And I forget what it is here. It might be 6 weeks. I think it's a little bit less actually, but I think it's 2 or 3 weeks here. I'd have to check. See, it changes.
We'll get back to you on that.
It changes.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. Every so often they have like a driver's book and they'll put in the rules of the road on that. They update it quite a bit actually.
Yeah, like usually every year they'll come out.
Every few years they
update
the laws.
Rules of the road.
But I don't really necessarily have a problem with that. I think it's they need to be checking for these really bad habits that could end up in somebody being killed because they're not paying attention. I mean, how many times we've seen it. Like, cause I won't get that close in front of the car. I'll walk up and I know they don't see me, so not looking. And I will stand, not real close, and far enough away. And then at the last second before they turn, so like say you're turning like this way, they will look this way because they're looking for the cars going this way. And they'll keep looking, It's the last second, then they look this way, and then they see you.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, crap. Well, yeah. When you're a pedestrian, you're told to look both ways.
Yes.
It goes the same for a car, too. You have 2 directions you should look in.
And
because you never know. There might be cars stopped right there for whatever reason. They could be pedestrian, which happens quite a bit. Or what if a car suddenly stalled and you didn't notice it because you're constantly looking this way? You ran into the back of the car. Or a bus. There's bus stops. And we've seen that happen, too. They didn't notice big giant bus there because they weren't looking that way. Same with pedestrians. So, oh crap, sorry.
Well, I know this is some people are going to raise an eyebrow at this, but I've even said to you a couple of times, like I want to take my backpack and and just kind of throw it against the side of the car.
And people have done that. People have hit the car. We've seen them. We have seen them hit the car. Like there was a couple of times, and that's another thing that's so annoying. Is when cars park across the sidewalk and you're in our way and you want us to walk out in the middle of the street in the middle of traffic, or we have to wait for you now because you decided, I need to see, even if you could see. It's different. I mean, yes, I realize you can stop if you have to move forward. That's one thing. But if you don't and you're still blocking the way, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But we have seen people almost do that. They're like pedestrian or a bike or something going across it, and they've almost hit them because they had to come far enough out. We have seen them hit their car even. So I mean, they almost hit them.
And
they have to have seen them. They have.
Well, you would think that.
You would think. Obviously, they weren't paying attention.
So basically,
they have the right of way, pedestrian.
To the drivers that are following the rules of the road, shoulder checking, looking all around them to make sure that
pedestrians included,
and that everyone is safe.
Right. Well, there are. I mean, let's say this: there are a lot of good drivers. There are. There are a lot of drivers who come up and they know they're blocking them back up, or they will wait till you completely clear the innocent, which is what they're supposed to do here. The laws where you are make it different. But there are a lot of very good drivers.
Oh, for sure, no,
and
we both agree.
And they're probably actually the ones who said yes, they should be road tested. Yeah. I wouldn't doubt it because they don't have anything to hide.
Well, and that's it. But the problem is it's the bad apples are painting everybody in broad strokes. That I might be a good driver, but Bill
is not.
But everyone's going to be, everyone's going to be cast in shadow. I shouldn't be. I do what I'm supposed to, and by creating this program of, mandatory renewal every time.
Well, puts everybody in the same boat.
Yeah, it creates a level playing field.
And it'll actually weed out. It can help to weed out the ones who are not so good drivers, and maybe get them retrained.
Exactly.
You know, if they need to be, or maybe just a correction. Like if it's not something huge.
Yeah.
But then the instructor or the examiner can say, "Well, you did this wrong. You might want to work on that."
Yeah,
or you
this
did
is
this
what
wrong,
we noticed.
you know, blah blah blah. That's one thing. This is something they can fix pretty easily. But I mean, there's some people who are just horrific drivers. You know, they can't even park properly. You know, you've seen it. You know, so I mean, they really shouldn't even have a license. I don't even know how they got a license. Some of them, like they're bad of driver. I don't even know how they are driving.
You know, when like I've said to you, I said there's many a time we've seen drivers where you just kind of want to.
What? How did you even get your license?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody either knows when they've seen them. Everybody's seen drivers
like how have you not killed somebody yet? Or
is the operative word, and they really need to be road tested more often.
Exactly.
It's drivers like that need to weed it out.
Yes.
Like, how did you get your license? I mean, they're that bad. Everybody knows one, or they've seen them. They have to. They're not horribly common, but I mean, you see enough of them out there. It's like, how are you on the road?
You know, so okay, let's put it up to you guys. Where do you stand on this? What do you think? Do you think this is a good idea to institute a mandatory retesting every time? Mm-hmm. Or are you on the opposing side of where you're like, no damn way, I did everything I had to do.
I don't have to do it again.
I don't want to do it again. We'd like to hear like both sides of the coin, because I'm curious. Like, we did a short poll and we got it
was pretty evenly split.
It was pretty evenly split
with the edge to the yeses, though.
You know, so I'd like
not by much.
We'd like to see
yeses
here on YouTube. Like, where do you guys fall in it? Mm-hmm. Are you a yes? Are you a no? Are you a maybe it's a good idea?
Think about it more,
you know,
which is okay too. You didn't give a maybe.
No, we
might have got some people with maybe.
Yeah, maybe that. Okay, maybe that's what we'll do. We'll put out another poll and see.
Well, I guess.
And we'll see where people land on that. Anything else you could add? Any?
Well, for me, okay, this is what I'm thinking, because as you know, we've been talking about this. It's a little bit of a swerve, I guess, sort of, with the graduate licensing. And I know it's one of the reasons they brought it in is to protect just this kind of thing. Because they're saying the longer you have to get your license, the better a driver you actually should be, right?
That's the idea.
That's the idea. Well, this is kind of my idea, is if, and a couple people agree, you have to agree with me. Mm-hmm. I think if you're a brand new driver, it's a good idea, the graduate licensing.
Of course.
So like G1 to G2 to G. Now, if for whatever reason, say you got to the G2 level, mm-hmm. or if you're an older driver, 20s, maybe 30s, or even if you're older, some people are older when they get their license. Mm-hmm. And you know, you're a more mature person. You're less likely to take the risk of someone who's younger, which is really one of the reasons why they brought this in. Yeah. Is to try to not make them so kind of thing, which a lot of times teenagers can be, and even young adults.
True.
So I'm thinking, say for whatever reason, say you got to a G2, and say because of sickness or whatever the reason might have been, you didn't get your G. Mm-hmm. I think you shouldn't have to go back to the G1, because you have to actually start right from scratch again. So right from the learner's permit to the written, you need somebody with you again to the G2 to the G3. So it's yet another 3 years, so or longer, depending. I don't think you should have to do that. I think you've already passed the one road test. Mm-hmm. And, well, maybe what they could do is, if it's been a few years since, say, you might have gotten the G2, maybe take the G2 road test again to make sure you haven't lost any of thing there. Okay. Maybe that. But if it hasn't been that long, I don't think you should have to take the like go right back
Mm.
to G. Once you've proven you can drive at
Yes.
that point, then you should be able to go to your G.
Mhm.
Or if say you had say a G2 or whatever the case is, you should just be able to kind of just go to the G, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Specifically whatever age you're at, kind of thing, or if you've had some kind of driving experience. I don't know. I think it's such a waste of time to have to go all the way back to the written and have somebody sitting with you all over again for whatever. I mean, there are people who've gotten to the point where they've gotten to G2, and for whatever reason, it could have been illness, it
Of
could
course,
have been
yeah.
whatever reason, you might have been out of the country, whatever it might have been. And then you have to start the process all over again.
Okay.
So I think that should be modified, maybe.
For sure, I agree with that.
In that sense.
You know, like with you, you have driven, you have gotten to the G2, but because of extenuating circumstances, you weren't able to complete. But I think even like for drivers, say my age, like I'm 50. I never went any further than the learners when I was 16.
Yeah.
You know, do I think I should have to go through the graduated system? Personally, no, because I'm not going to be making the foolish mistakes or the jumping the gun or whatever. Because
well, the difference with you, I mean, I've driven on and off since I was 16.
Yes.
So you haven't really. So you're a newer driver than I am. So do you think you should like, for example, I think I should be able to just go to the G because I have a lot of years driving experience. But do you, since you were 16, you haven't really driven since you were 16 on a learner's permit? So do you think you should have the same kind of thing, even though you're older, not a teenager? I'm talking about like if you've had some kind of years, some experience on the road, you should be able to kind of avoid that whole thing in a way. Or do you think you should go through the graduate because you haven't really driven that much, and it is a somewhat good learning experience to do that with? Or do you think you should be able to jump right to the G?
I think for
like it used to be like that here.
Like for like the older system, like when we were first coming up.
Yeah. It was called the 365 here, which is the learner's permit in the States. And after the year, you just went to a full G license.
I think for like,
or it's full license. We call it a G license.
Like for say like my demographic, you know, the more mature adult.
Yeah.
You know, maybe go through that version of the system.
See, that's one thing which my sister's a driving instructor believes there should be. There should be actually two different systems. One for the younger generation, so 16 to maybe 20-year-olds, and then the older generation.
Yes.
Learners or not, because they do. You have a different mindset.
Yeah.
Because the younger tends to be a little bit more gung-ho, more risk-taking.
More aggressive.
The older generation doesn't tend to be as aggressive that way and tends to be better learners, to pay more attention and that kind of thing.
That's kind of like the point.
So that's kind of what she thought.
Yeah.
There should actually be two separate type systems, one for the younger generation and one for the older generation, and how they even obtain the first license.
Yeah. So it's like.
Yeah, I guess so.
You know, so
because the older you are, you tend to pay more attention. I mean, that's just how it is. There's a lot of younger people,
and you're not.
They are not all, but a lot.
As you get a little older, you're not going to be the one showing off and.
Not normally, no. Although we have known people of our generation who still do that, but not all do.
But
you're less likely to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, I would say let's it
needs to be overhauled.
Let's overhaul the entire system.
Yeah. There are a lot of major flaws in it.
Oh, for sure.
Sure. It needs to be overhauled.
And I think that's kind of what we brought to light in this discussion.
Hopefully.
I hope so as well. We put some ideas out that would be a good addition to the system.
I think so.
More checks and balances, keep the roadway safe, our pedestrians safe, and maybe.
And in the same vein,
yes,
some pedestrians who consistently do things too, and I mean sometimes they can get ticketed. I mean I don't think it happens all the time, but they can get ticketed if the police find them of doing kind of dumb things as well. Maybe they should also have to learn, like maybe do this like school, or if they're a driver, a lot of pedestrians are drivers too, and even during that, like even pedestrian safety. I mean, like because some pedestrians do some pretty stupid things.
That's true.
We've seen that too. I mean, but because you don't need a license to walk, so I mean, how do you kind of police that? If they're a driver too, do you kind of have to make them go through a class in order to renew their license? What? I mean, because again, they also should learn. You don't just walk on a red light when there's traffic coming, or cross when you've got 2 feet of a car coming at you, or
cross the crest of a blind hill.
Yeah, we've seen that too. I mean, you can't see cars coming, and it's a busy road, and you cross. I mean, when you can't see if there's cars coming, I mean, that's you're taking your life in your hands, So I mean, yeah, we recognize that pedestrians do some pretty stupid things too, and I mean, and part of the accidents are pedestrians' fault. But I mean, there are other accidents you don't hear about as frequently.
No.
So we find a lot of times in the news,
yes.
they tend to put the onus on the pedestrian. And what if the pedestrian's done everything right? They're going on the green. They've looked all around like they're supposed to do. They may even wait till it's fully green and everybody's stopped. And there will still be cars. We've done it. There'll still be cars that will try to run you down because they're not looking. So I mean, it's really on both sides. The problem is car's going to win every time. So that's why we try to put more of the onus on them.
You're driving the 3-ton vehicle.
Right, exactly. So, and we've seen it happen to us.
Yeah.
So, and it happens too frequently.
Well, and that's the problem. It happens, like you said, it happens too frequently.
Yeah.
And the only way we can stop it is change it.
Right, and somehow hold them accountable for it.
And
I mean, because them waving at you saying sorry doesn't cut it. Oh, sorry, just ran you over.
Well, I think I told you this once. I had a gentleman. I was coming home from work, and I had a gentleman cut across me.
Right.
Like literally as close as we are seated.
I've had a truck do that to me.
And so I kind of jumped back a little bit.
Right.
And he got out of the car.
Oh, he did.
And he came, and he and I kind of popped off, and I said, you need to be more aware.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I wasn't that close. I said, all it would take is me to take a half a step forward.
And you would hit me.
You would have hit me. I think people need to realize lives can be changed in a fraction of a second.
Asked a lot of families who lost people because of the driver's negligence. Too many. Look at that poor family who lost a little boy now.
Yes.
Just because of who knows. So granted, I will say again, we don't know the full circumstances of that, so we're not gonna say it was definitely this or that, but just because of what it looked like, because the news was there, just what we've heard the police say. And all that. I mean, you kind of had, or even what witnesses said, it kind of looked like the driver was at fault for this.
Yes.
And it sounded like they were turning, and we've seen it so many times. Drivers not looking at pedestrians on a green light. They're paying too much attention to the oncoming traffic so they can get in.
Yep.
You have to also look for pedestrians. They have the green light too, and they actually have the right of way.
Of course.
So, don't just turn because you got to make sure there's no cars or a bike or something crossing in your path before you turn. It's not that difficult.
Of course.
And maybe that boy would be alive today if that driver had done that. So, I mean, that's pretty much why we decided to do this today. Because it's very sad, it's aggravating.
And enough's
it all the time.
And enough's enough.
And enough's enough. It's time to take accountability. Look before you turn. Is it that difficult to look for pedestrians?
No. No.
We have to look for you.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of pedestrians doing it, Brian, like I said, some just walk willy-nilly. But a lot of the time, what we have seen, it really would be the driver's fault in that case.
So it's the time has come now for the driving community to have to stand up
and pay attention.
Pay attention and
look all ways. I mean, you don't just back. Although I've seen that too. People just back up this way and not look where they're going, and bang into somebody behind them. I mean, like, isn't that hard to look around you? Why are you behind the wheel if you can't pay attention to your surroundings? Why are you driving? You are freaking danger on the road if you are not looking around.
No, exactly.
We've seen them plow into something. Actually, today we just saw a delivery driver plow into a curb because he came in too fast.
Yeah, and because at the end
he misjudged it.
Yeah, he took the angle too
fast, and he hit it, and he hit the curb.
And you never forget the sound of like a bumper hitting concrete.
Yeah, you hit that.
You know that.
Yeah.
So
because one, he misjudged the length of his car and speed he was going.
Yeah. So like we said, this is
really why we decided it was an important discussion to have.
And it's something we felt needed to be put out there, and it's something that we felt we needed you guys to think about. And
yeah, because we know a lot of you agree with us. Obviously, the poll shows that a lot of people do agree with it. And maybe people who said no might agree with it if they heard why we think the way.
And like we had to share the fact that this is an important issue even for us, you know, because we don't drive all the time.
No, we do have vehicles, but
we
do walk a lot.
We do walk a fair bit.
We have a walkable area, so we don't really need to drive. So
but when we do drive, we're very diligent about how we drive.
Most definitely, yes.
We're very aware of our surroundings, and that's why we're able to keep each other safe.
Yeah.
And those around us safe.
Yeah.
And I think now's the time to come in and say, okay, now you have to learn how to keep each other safe again.
Right. Because then maybe we cut down on here on the news, so another kid got killed, or another car accident here.
Mm-hmm.
If people actually had to be more responsible with how they drive their vehicles, and if they actually had to be tested every time they renew their license, they might actually keep on top of their skills if they would lose that license. I mean, if there's that risk of doing that, they might actually be more conscientious and actually learn and keep these skills up. And then everybody will win. It's safer roads, because it's not just one or two people; it'll be everybody would have to do it. So,
and that's all.
And you pay for it anyway here. So,
and that's the long and the short of it. That's what we're saying. There needs to be more safety on the roads.
Right. Yeah.
There needs to be more awareness on the roads. So, let us know where you fall on this question. Are you a yes? Are you a no?
Are you maybe?
Are you a maybe? Or are you a I'm not really sure?
Well, it's like maybe, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, might be good idea, might be bad idea, I don't know.
Or are you one of those people that are no damn way?
I'm sure there's a lot of parents like that too, sure.
And the thing is, even if you are, we want to hear it.
And why?
And why? Because the only way we can understand where everyone sits on this subject is by hearing all sides.
Well, even if you're against it, what would you do instead?
What would you do?
What would be a better alternative? How can you teach drivers to maybe pay more attention?
Exactly.
Including on the road with other cars, with pedestrians, all of that. I mean, what could change that could help minimize or eliminate these kind of accidents?
Exactly.
Whether or not they get road tested again, is there something else you could think of that they could do that maybe would fix kind of this? I mean, talk about pedestrians too. I mean, the pedestrians who walk, dumb or whatever too. I mean, how can we fix this so that this kind of thing gets minimized, if not hopefully eliminated?
So, guys, the discussion still continues.
I'm sure it will.
And we hope that you will come back next week, and we'll have another discussion with you. I want to say thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming in and having the discussion with me on this subject. I know we both feel very passionate about it.
Yep.
And guys, thank you for tuning in and sharing your time with us as we talk about this very polarizing question. So if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. It's over that. No, it's down there. And
bell's up there.
And hit the notification bell. See, that's why I need a co-host. I need somebody to direct me which way it goes. And you'll get
sometimes it's debate because we don't always agree. So we've been agreeing the last few times. We don't always agree. So you might get one of these discussions one day.
Maybe it'll have to be we'll have to find a subject where you disagree. But guys,
and see if who you agree with.
Guys, thank you again for letting us come in and have this discussion with you. Please keep the lines of communication open between everybody, because the only way we can change things is if we listen and we talk to each other. And to all the moms in Canada, US, and around the world, happy Mother's Day. We wouldn't be here without you moms. So God bless you, and we love you. Be safe. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.